Thomas in Auen is getting ready for a very special day. As every year, he'll be bearing the standard of his local road or district and will be flanked by 2 pages. On such a politically and socially important day for Innerrhoden, this represents a considerable honor. The solemn entry with the flags of the various districts in the canton, the cantonal government, and the members of the cantonal court. It's the last Sunday in April, and every seat in the parish church of St. Mauritius is occupied. For the officials and for many electors, the church service represents an important and dignified start to the Landsgemeinde, an open-air political assembly and voting ceremony. In Innerrhoden, the Landsgemeinde is the most important day in the political year. On this day, the people gather, the state manifests itself, the government and the cantonal court face the people and stand for re-election. And it's on this day that administrative matters are dealt with and legislation is made. Such a political meeting is only possible in a small canton. In a large canton, it would be inconceivable because of the space required. So we're proud that we have the Landsgemeinde in Innerrhoden. It's the earliest form of democracy, a form that has changed little by little over the years. Although the Landsgemeinde may not always have looked quite the same, in essence, it has remained unchanged. It's the self-determination of the people. Landsgemeinden used to take place mainly in the mountain cantons. Here it was more difficult for rulers to assert their sovereign rights. So it was that in the 15th and 16th centuries, the freedom-loving people of Appenzell were able to break free from the dominion of the abbot of St. Gall. Thus it gradually became possible to hold democratic meetings. The sword, a sign of the ability to defend oneself and a symbol of independence, has remained to the present day. Maria and Martin in Auen traditionally go on foot to the Landsgemeinde.
For me,
the Landsgemeinde is a day to look forward to and an excellent custom, but not just a custom. It's also an important political day on which we get to see those who govern us. When I was younger, I looked forward to the Landsgemeinde because Father brought home sweets and things. Later, it was a day for the men. I used to enjoy that. But now it's just as enjoyable with the women. Today we're going to the Landsgemeinde for the 9th time together. I like it. It's an enjoyable day. And I find it good that the Landsgemeinde can change. For example, it's quite natural nowadays for the women to be there, although we couldn't imagine such a thing happening when I was a girl. Until 1990, the Landsgemeinde in Innerrhoden was men's business. Over and over again, moves to introduce women's suffrage at cantonal level were unsuccessful. Many believe that this original form of democracy, with its traditional rituals and symbols, would be threatened by the participation of women. But this view could not have been more wrong, as the ceremonial parade that begins on the stroke of midday impressively demonstrates. the governing and deputy cantonal presidents. Between them, the court usher in historical official robes, followed by the council clerk with the property register, the contents of which go back to the wars of liberation. Thomas Inauen is one of the 7 standard bearers in the lane between the visiting spectators and the assembled electors. Here, women are only admitted if they have a valid voting card, whereas in the case of Appenzell men, the security staff also recognize sidearms as conferring authorization to enter the ring. The large bell is rung for silence. The current governing president declares the Landsgemeinde open.
Hochgeachtete Damen und Herren, getreue liebe Mitlandleute und Eidgenossen, von Politikern wird erwartet.
The president reviews the most important political issues of the day, both foreign and domestic. This is followed by the report of the cantonal administration and the presentation of the annual accounts. The Constitution of Appenzell Innerrhoden states that the authority of the canton rests essentially with the people and is exercised by them at the Landsgemeinde.
Wort zum Bericht über die kantonale Landsverwaltung ist frei. Ist der Herr Zucker. Jetzt Wort.
Hochgeachter Herr Landemann, getreue, liebe Mitlandleute und Eidgenossen. Wir haben soeben von unserem Landemann erfahren.
Speaking directly from the chair, voters can now express an opinion on the official activities of the government or concerning an item on the agenda. Then follows the election of the cantonal government, known here in Innerrhoden as the Standeskommission.
Wir kommen zur Wahl vom regierenden und stillstehenden Landemann. Ich habe von euch vor einem Jahr das Landessiegel übernommen. Ich lege das Landessiegel wieder zurück in eure Hände mit der Versicherung, das Landessiegel nach Verfassung, Gesetz und nach meinem Gewissen gebraucht zu haben. Wer den Herr Landemann Carlo Schmid zum regierenden Landemann wählen will, der erhebe die Hand.
Die Landsgemeinde hat als Versammlung grosse Vorteile. Einerseits
As a legislative assembly, the Landsgemeinde has considerable advantages. The state and the people step out of anonymity and meet in one place. The government and the cantonal court are face to face with the people and have to answer for their actions. Everybody knows one another and tries to ensure that together they can govern the canton. A Landsgemeinde is also of emotional importance. It promotes cantonal identity.
Ich nehme das Landessiegel aus euren Händen in meine Hände mit dem Versprechen, dass ich es im nächsten Jahr nach Verfassung und Gesetz will benutzen. Wir kommen zum Wahl vom stillstehenden Landamt. Wertige Vorschläge.
Today, a new deputy president must be elected. The candidates are nominated by means of spontaneous shouts from the people.
Verstanden worden ist weiter Dr. Ivo Bischofberger, Kantonsgerichtspräsident. Wenn der weitere Vorschläge macht, da ist nicht der Fall. Ich stimme ab nach der Reihenfolge von den Ländern, die verstanden worden sind. Wer dem Säckelmeister Bruno Koster die Stimme will geben, der hebe die Hand.
It's sometimes difficult to determine the majority from a show of hands, but today it's quite clear. In this tiny open canton, minds have long been made up. Everyone knows each other, and everyone knows the various candidates.
Ganz klar gewählt, der Herr Säckelmeister Bruno Koster zum neuen Landamt. Wir gratulieren und besuchen die Ehrenplatz einzunehmen. Wir kommen zu der Eidesleistung vom Landamt und vom Landvolk. Im Namen der heiligen Dreifaltigkeit. Amen. Ein jeder, der einen Eid zu schwören hat, soll wohl bedenken, welch ernste und verantwortungsvolle Sache dies ist. Desgleichen soll er von keinem Fürsten noch Herrn keinerlei besondere Pension, Schenkungen oder Gaben nehmen, denn in den Landsäckel. Das habe ich wohl verstanden, Das habe ich wohl verstanden.
Wie es mir vorgelesen und eröffnet worden ist.
Wie es mir vorgelesen und eröffnet worden ist.
Das will ich wahr und stets halten.
Das will ich wahr und stets halten.
Treulich und ungefährlich.
Treulich und ungefährlich.
Also bitte ich, dass mir Gott und die Heiligen helfen. Amen.
Dass mir Gott und die Heiligen helfen. Amen. Ebenso sollen die Landleute hinwiederum schwören. Die Ehre Gottes, die Ehre des Landammanns und des Landes Nutz und Ehre zu fördern und den Schaden zu wenden und ein Ammann und dessen Gericht und Rat zu schirmen, dem Ammann und seinem Boten gehorsam zu sein, wozu jedermann aufgefordert wird, dass er es halte und ein Genüge leiste nach besten Kräften. Das habe ich wohl verstanden, wie es mir vorgelesen und eröffnet worden ist. Das will ich wahr und stets halten, treulich und ungefährlich. Also bitte ich, dass mir Gott und die Heiligen helfen. Amen.
Photographs taken between 1920 and 1950 consistently show voters in dark suits in the Assembly Square in Appenzell, where the Landsgemeinde is held. And newsreels from the early 1970s show a picture that has changed little. The ceremonial proceedings of the Landsgemeinde have also only changed very slowly over the centuries. Direct democracy, exercised at an annual assembly in the open air, has remained one of the specific features of Appenzell Innerrhoden, of which the people here are particularly proud. Critics who wish to see this ancient institution abolished are rare, in contrast to the situation in Appenzell Ausserrhoden. Here in 1997, the Landsgemeinde was surprisingly done away with. Some think that an open show of hands is not consistent with a contemporary democracy, that the mixture of tradition and politics is not acceptable for a modern canton. But even conservative forces who could not or did not wish to become accustomed to the presence of women in the ring supported the abolition of the Landsgemeinde in Ausserrhoden. Traditions can only survive if their form and content are adapted to change.
Wir kommen mit zum Geschäft 5, Wahl der übrigen Mitglieder der Standeskommission.
Once the government has been elected, it's the turn of the 13-strong cantonal court.
Zur Wahl von den übrigen Mitgliedern vom Kantonsgericht.
The judges also stand behind the chair, faces turned away from the voters, and wait for their confirmation in office. Sometimes it takes a lot of courage to stick to one's opinion when one is surrounded by voters who hold a different view. But one can always mount the steps to the chair to address the people. Emotions can become aroused if voting is close. I can remember that in 1990, everybody believed that they knew how voting would go concerning a particular item of business. But one speaker was able to turn the whole thing around, which is what can happen at a Landsgemeinde like this, if the mood should take it. The executive and judiciary bodies have been elected. This year there have been no changes, and the various items of business, mostly changes to the Constitution, bills and applications for funding, have been approved with a clear majority by the voters. From the people, nobody else is asked to speak. This Sunday the Landsgemeinde has been especially fast and efficient.
Innerhalb von einer Stand 2
Within a couple of hours, the most important political questions have been dealt with for a year. The elections and voting are over, and funds have been allocated, and these decisions are final. But a Landsgemeinde also has disadvantages. One must be present at this time and in this square. Only then can one vote. If one cannot be here, one is effectively disenfranchised. So the right to vote is qualified to a certain extent. Furthermore, voting is open, which is inconsistent with the principle of voting secrecy.
Hochgeachteter Herr Landamann, hochgeachtete Herren, getreue, liebe Mitlandsleute und Eidgenossen. Damit ist die Geschäftsordnung von der heutigen Landsgemeinde erschöpft. Unter Anrufung vom Machtschutz vom Allerhöchsten, für Land und Volk von Innerrhoden, erkläre ich die Landsgemeinde 2000 für geschlossen.
After the Landsgemeinde, the voters disperse. At various places in the town, the 6 districts that make up Innerrhoden now hold their own meetings. At these citizens' gatherings, the district councils are elected and voting takes place on social and cultural issues. Here too, Maria and Martin Inauen exercise their special civic rights in the canton of Appenzell-Innerrhoden. In the matter of women's suffrage, the Landsgemeinde has already proved that it's open to change. I think that if it can remain just as adaptable in the future, it has every chance of surviving, in this form or another. Appenzell-Innerrhoden has completed its election and voting rituals. The more than 500-year-old Landsgemeinde has proven itself again this year. However, for many, the best day of the year is not nearly over. I believe that we in Innerrhoden will keep the Landsgemeinde. From a practical point of view, the voting, the election procedure, it's quite suitable for a small canton. Above all, it's necessary. For the population, it's meaningful and promotes identity. It reinforces the feeling of home and belonging. After all, Innerrhoden without the Landsgemeinde might no longer be Innerrhoden.
Innerrhoden ohne Landsgemeinde wäre vielleicht noch mehr Innerrhoden.